He knows. Tear that falls, He hears you when you call. On the wings of this beautiful music by Don Moen, I welcome you to tonight's edition of Fathers and Family. Fathers and Family. Anytime you hear that song, you know it is time to get around the table and be with Pastor Gate as we discuss issues um, concerning fathers. And we're doing this on your lifestyle and leisure, and business platform, which is Z101.9 FM. Z101.9 FM. And this is your lifestyle, leisure, and business platforms. That's where we are every Sunday night from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So if you are with me, then call a friend, and to call a friend, and then let's all share together. You can also join us on our Facebook, X, and Instagram on ZFMGH, and then we can interact from there. You could also join us on YouTube and TikTok. That is Z Multimedia. You can get us there. You want to visit the website, it is www.zmultimedia.com. www.zmultimedia.com. You can get us there. You could also get me on my Facebook, John Gatti. You can join me there. And along the line, I will give you a number that you can call if need be, and or send a WhatsApp to. I can give you the WhatsApp number now, and maybe repeat it along the line, so that you can start preparing your questions, your contributions, because we wish this would be as interactive as possible. Once again, welcome to Fathers and Family. My name is Pastor Gate, and I'm here with Emmanuel Kante, who is my producer, pulling the knobs and turning things around to make this program possible. So it's a Sunday evening, and let's look straight into the Word of God. My name is Pastor Gate. Okay, so we've been considering the subject of fatherhood, and for the past 2 weeks we have looked at fatherhood breakdown. And when you talk of fatherhood breakdown, we're talking of a very major crisis that we are facing as society, because we're having challenges with the activities and functions of fatherhood. I want to read a beginning scripture today as we reiterate what we learned in the past 2 weeks. Psalm 78, verses 5 to 6. Psalm 78, verses 5 to 6. It says, "For he established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children." Now, the import of this is that God commanded the fathers that they should make the law known to their children, that the generations that come might also know, and that those who would be born after that would be informed, and they would also declare them excuse me, that they would also declare them to their children. And that and it will go on and on and on. when we started, we looked at a situation where Israel failed. Israel failed to carry out this instruction or this expectation. We learned about the generation after Joshua. You know, the Bible describes that generation as, of course, the Joshua generation, and there's a generation that outlived Joshua. But the generation after that, in Judges chapter 2 and verse 10, we read that when all that generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them, who did not know the Lord, nor the works which he had done for Israel. So the point is, God intended that the fathers would communicate to their children, and the children who would be born to them would also communicate to the children that come in. And the generations after generations, there would be the passing on of the will of God, the word of God, the wisdom of God, and the knowledge of the works of God. But what happened? We are told here that a generation came that did not know the Lord. And they did not know the Lord, did not know his word, did not know his ways. So that it implies that a generation failed in passing on the knowledge to the other generation. And so we discover a big challenge or it's a big problem that happened in Israel. What happened was that generation that did not know the Lord, nor the works that he had done, went into idolatry, because they now had to learn from the nations all around them. And when the nations, of course, the nations were already idolatrous, and so they joined in their spiritual decadence. Now, that became the lifestyle of Israel for a very long time. A very long time, because they would sin by going after the idols, after the Baals and the Ashtoreths, of the gods of the Philistines, the gods of the Canaanites, and then God would punish them by raising the nations around them to subdue Israel. And then when they now cried unto the Lord then had mercy on them and raised a leader, a judge, a warrior to rescue them, to redeem them from their oppressors. And then that rescuer would become a judge and would rule Israel. And for as long as that judge ruled, there was peace and there was sanity in the land. So there was peace, there was a restoration of the service of God. But when the judge died, they would go back and sin again, and the whole cycle would begin. So the cycle of rebellion, of retribution, of repentance, of redemption, and of rest. That became a vicious cycle that the children of Israel went through. But then that also gave us a few principles to learn. As fathers, let us understand that faith is not inherited automatically. Faith is not inherited automatically. The fact that you are a Christian, a godly person, does not automatically mean that your children will take after you. And I've always said that if your God is worthy of serving, if your faith is worthy of following, then introduce your children very early to that. It must be a conscious effort to teach a generation. Each generation must personally know God. Each generation must personally know God. We must make every effort to get our generations to after us to know God. And the spiritual legacy must be actively transmitted and received. So fathers have a very arduous task of transmitting their religious or spiritual legacy to the generations after them. And when the knowledge of God disappears, moral collapse follows. So we've talked about these, and we also know that because the people could not pass on their religious legacy to the generation after them, they failed. And if we also fail to do that, we'll also see a degenerate generation. Now, in our society today, what do we find? We find a situation where because fathers failed to pass on their religious, their moral, and their civic knowledge over to their children, it affected their lifestyle. And believe you me, and I know I am not the only one. I know I'm not the only one going through this. Because, look, I get worried, very worried, and I know I'm not the only one, very worried about people who insult elders. Now it has become the order of the day, and unfortunately, this is being fanned as in blowing air into it, and also funded with money by politicians. I mean, so that you get people to insult your political opponents. By so doing, do you know that we are breaking down the very fabric of our society? We are a very decent society here in Ghana. We are a very decent people with decent cultures that respect old age and so on. And as we were growing, every older person was either a father or an uncle, a mother or an auntie. And that is how we respected them. But today, anybody can pick a phone, stand somewhere, mention names, and insult people using unprintable language. I mean, it saddens me anytime I hear this. And you see, the only reason I can give to this is that there is a disconnect between that individual and his father. I want to believe that no father would want to see his son or his daughter insult people the way they do. Excuse me. No father would want to see that. And yet, somebody somewhere will influence that child to do that. So the question is, what are the fathers doing? What are the fathers doing? What is happening to our society? Fathers have obviously failed us, because if fathers passed on that legacy to the children properly, this is not what we would be seeing. Look, there is moral decay, no two ways about that. But this social behavior is getting out of hand. and the numbers keep increasing. The numbers keep increasing, and it is worrying. So that happens when a generation does not pass on the traditional values, the godly virtues, and so on to the next generation. And like I said, this must be a conscious effort, and I hold fathers completely responsible for this. Fathers must stand out and be counted. It is our responsibility to teach our children that you don't insult an elderly person. It is our responsibility to teach our children that you don't dress anyhow and step out, that you do not expose yourself unduly when you are a lady, that you do not wear your trouser revealing your boxers or your underwear as a young man. And even in church, we seem to be losing it. We seem to be losing it even in church, because if you look at the type of worship and the dance that go on in the church, you wonder, well, the people cannot go to the discos and the nightclubs and the dance halls, so they do it in church. Look, whether you do it in the dance hall or you do it in church, indecency is indecency. And we should look at that. Okay, so fathers, let's watch this. Otherwise, the generations after us will be ignorant of the knowledge of God, will be ignorant of our culture, our traditional norms, our practices. They will be ignorant of the values like hard work, patience, honesty, respect that we used to enjoy. But these must be passed on in an intentional manner. If we fail, our children will also be engaged in inappropriate worship, misdirected zeal, misplaced priorities, even in church, and we misuse the gifts and the talents of God. If we don't pass it on, then our generation will engage in insensitive lifestyle, and we talked about all this. The bottom line is, when fathers lose their voice, generations lose their way. When fathers lose their voice, generations lose their way. We continued in that same vein after looking at the biblical example of fatherhood breakdown. We looked at a social example, and last week we talked about the swinging 60s, and by the swinging 60s, I mean the period after the Second World War. The Second World War was fought between 1939 and 1945. But during that time, what did we see? Many fathers were conscripted into the army. They didn't have to be military men. They needed more hands, so they had to go to the houses, just conscript men of certain age, and so they had to take them to war. They went to war here in Africa. They were sent to Burma. Some went to other places, and Congo, they went there, and many of them lost their lives. Many of these fathers who were conscripted into the army, who fought in the Second World War, lost their lives. And so what happened? Those who survived and returned had some of them had very miserable life. I mean, can you imagine the trauma of seeing your friend, your colleague in battlefield, wounded and killed in the most gruesome and grotesque manner? I mean, it will take you for the rest of your life to have that in your mind. You look at what they went through. Some, I mean, in Europe and Americas, all over, some who returned had this post war traumatic syndrome, which made them dysfunctional as fathers. So you look at the World War veterans, and you realize that most of them had issues psychologically. They came back home, they couldn't talk, they became dysfunctional, and so in the years after, the children that were born during the war and after the war became virtually fatherless. Became fatherless. And this fatherless generation became teenagers in the 60s. They became teenagers in the 60s. And that is when the cultural challenge began. So there were no fathers to take care of them. Those who returned, like I said, had issues, and they either became extremely strict, they became conservative, and they were shaped by the discipline of the war. Otherwise, and some even went overboard. Those who were disciplinarians became extremely hard on the children. And so this generated a sort of a rebellion, a resistance from that generation. And so they either didn't have fathers around, or the fathers around were not functioning, they were dysfunctional. And so it started a certain revolution of youth. This Gen Z revolution did not start today. We had a worse one in the 60s. And so any man who stepped out to have a national or international fame became a role model. I'm not condemning them, but people like James Brown and Jimi Hendrix and so on, became the icons of the young people. Musicians, because of their stagecraft, attracted these young people, and so they copied their lifestyle, their dressing, the style of singing, and they respected their words more than their own fathers. Of course, that is if they had one, and the others who did not had some unusual freedom and self-expression to experiment with life. And so as they did, they took on their own lifestyle. You can talk about some of the things they did. There was this, even there was some sort of a media and music revolution. People did some, we had some music at that time, heavily metallic music that even was carried into the 70s. People would not be controlled by the elderly. And so even in the military, where you expect order to prevail, in Africa, you would have young military men rise against their military superiors in coup d'etats and so on. All this started from the swinging 60s, where fathers were either absent or dysfunctional. And so it came, with its own revolution. Rock music became very popular because that was what they saw the people do. We had political upheavals. That was when we had this civil rights movement in the 60s, and then the coup d'etats in the 70s. And all these was because of the the absenteeism of fathers. there were a lot of other protests. That was when you had the early feminist movement, because the fathers were not there. And what do you expect the women to do? They were also tired of playing second fiddle to nobody. And so they also came together in feminist movements, in feminist revolutions, and so on. The world became a bit chaotic, and all because fathers were not there. There was discipline, a breakdown of discipline. There was distortion in people's identity. We had what we call the sexual revolution, and people were trying all sort of lifestyle. The sexual revolution led to what we call the baby boom. Change. The baby boom movement, where children were born to young people. So you have teenagers giving birth, not being able to take care of them, and completely chaotic. That is an aspect of the world war that we do not talk about. The effect of the world war that we don't talk about. Fatherhood came under distress. And because of that, fathers, of course, failed also to pass on their legacy to the generations. And so part of what we see is what they experienced in the post-war period. Now, today, because of that, we have an awful statistics, which I picked from a magazine. And this magazine was a form of a newsletter by the Bay Area Male Involvement Network in the US. And there was an article titled Getting Men Involved. Getting Men Involved. Among other things, the article put together certain statistics and very, very, very frightening statistics because of the fatherlessness and the dysfunctional behavior or nature of fatherhood. Now, I read through this last week, but let me repeat that today. The statistics say 63% of suicides, youth suicide, 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. Fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. Now, it doesn't mean that these children do not have fathers. They do. They do, because the mothers did not just get up one day to conceive or drink some pure water to make their bellies full and then give birth to these children. There were fathers, there were men involved, and yet you don't find the men. Either they denied paternity or they ran away when they realized that they couldn't handle things, because you see, giving birth to a child or fathering a child is not a difficult task at all. Anybody can father a child. Anybody can father any man, as long as he has healthy systems, and a willing or available woman. Any man can father a child. And so fathering a child or producing a child progenitally, it's not an achievement, because anybody can do it. Even rapists become fathers because their act of wickedness can lead to pregnancy and, for that matter, the producing of a child. So when all these men who are not there, who are run away with wicked people or pleasure-seeking men, who take advantage of innocent women or pleasure-seeking women, because men and women will be seeking pleasure together. Unfortunately, the stigma stays with the woman. And there are people who have even fathered children that they do not know. It is possible to have a child that you have never met, that you have no idea about as a man. You are sent to a village for some duty. You are sent to the city for some duty. You meet somebody and one night standoff, and then you go back and you never meet that person again. Meanwhile, what you did left a seed. That is what happened even with the soldiers during the Second World War, where they went, instead of instead of making peace, they made babies and left to their countries. So these things do happen. And we have a situation where 90% of all children in the streets are from fatherless homes. And what else do we see? 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, they are not correct in a way. They are fine, but they have serious behaviors. Either they are bullies, fighting people, getting on drugs, and so on. 85% of such children are from fatherless homes. We also have young people who are rapists, and they get onto that through misplaced or displaced anger. And 80% of such rapists also come from fatherless homes. We have 71% of all high school dropouts coming from fatherless homes. The mothers are unable to take care or support them again. So if you have had a little education, if you now know how to write, if you now know how to recite A, B, C, D, and read 1 or 2, then stay at home. Let's work together to take care of ourselves, because father is not there. 71% of all dropouts from high school are from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients of chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. So the children or the young people who are found in rehabilitation centers, we call them chemical abuse centers. Either they are on drugs, and so they want to help them get off the drugs and so on. These young people, we have about 75% of them coming from fatherless homes. And then we have 70% of all juveniles, young people in correctional institution. They call that state-operated institution. Correctional institution, bolster homes, and so on. 70% are from fatherless homes. Can you blame them? No father, no role model. And so you find them all in the state-operated institution. 85% of all youth sitting in our prisons, 85% of all youth sitting in our prisons grew from fatherless homes. I mean, these are frightening statistics. And then in the society, in the American society, where these statistics were, of course, we don't have such statistics in, I wouldn't say we don't have, but I haven't come across such statistics in our part of the world. And I believe the figure might even soar higher than what we have here. In America, 37% of children live without their biological father. This is 35% of all children in America live without their biological fathers. Now, if you get into the black community, in America, the figure is a whopping 68%. So you get into the black community, typical black community in America, 68% of the children live without their biological fathers. Either they live with their mothers alone, or they live with the mother has married another man who is only interested in the woman and in his own children, and so may neglect the others. And you have situations where a woman and children are on family support. Meanwhile, the man is not there, and as long as he's able to provide the family support, the system okays it. And so you have 68% of all the children in the black communities living without their biological father. And it's a serious crisis. It's a serious crisis. And one author, David Blackenhorn, who wrote the book Fatherless America, he stated that America is, and I quote, America is facing not just the loss of fathers, but also the erosion of the ideal fatherhood, unquote. And we should be careful as fathers, because the way things are going, the future appears bleak. And let me state on this program, beloved, fatherhood is intentional, or fatherhood must be intentional. Now, when we get into deep into this series, we will get to know what fatherhood means, how to even plan before becoming a father. It must be a conscious decision. It must be an intentional act. Now, the best situation is when your wife or your woman tells you, "I'm pregnant," and the man leaps for joy. Any man who rejoices over that news is a man to be looked for. They are the fathers we are looking for. It doesn't matter whether you are married. If you have 3 children already and the 4th one is on the way, your wife tells you, "Oh, I'm pregnant with our 4th child," and you get angry, you have a problem as a father. I mean, I've had to deal with a situation like that where the man wouldn't talk to the wife for months just because the wife became pregnant. And the question is, did the wife drink pure water to become pregnant? When the man wanted to go near the wife, if the wife had refused, and the Bible says you should not deprive your husband of his conjugal rights, and so on. And then when something happens, you say, "Why didn't you take protection?" But didn't you know that the fun had a consequence? And so when a man gets angry or gets frightened or turns his back on a woman just because the woman is pregnant, that's a serious situation to look at, because that person, it doesn't matter whether he's married or not, that person could be a dangerous man, a dangerous father. We'll talk about all that. But for now, you realize that I've been mentioning father. But let's ask ourselves, who is a father? Who is a father? A father, of course, is more than just a biological male partner. In fact, the Bible describes a father in a social, emotional, and spiritual factor. So we will look at that. But first, let's interrogate the term father. The term father. You want to be called a father? It is not an easy title. But let me start by saying that the term father is a title of respect, a title of respect. You know, Africans are noted for this because every male who is a father, or by estimation could be a father or could be my father's age, is a father. And we give them the respect they deserve because they are older than us and they are capable of fathering. And so we call them father. It's a title of respect. By virtue of age and position, we call them fathers. And that is why, let me repeat this, that is why it hurts so much to find young people insulting people in position, people who could be the age of their grandfathers, insulting them. Because when we talk of a father, it's a title of respect. Anybody who is older than you and who can biologically father you is a father. And let me be blunt with this, that if a person is about 20 years or more older than you, he can father you. So to you, he's a father and must be accorded that respect. So the term father is a title of respect. In the scripture, we find King Joash addressing Elijah the prophet as father. You know, he called him my father, my father. He was a king, but this was an older person in the society prophesying over the place, and so he called him my father. Elisha called Elijah my father, and of course Joash called Elisha my father. So Elisha had a father in Elijah, and then Joash had a father in Elisha. And you see, they were not related biologically, but because they were older, they were in responsible positions, they respected them with the title. So number one, father is a title of respect. Number two, in society, the father is a title of recognition. It's not only a title of respect, it's also a title of recognition. And of course, in our generation, those who invented things have been called fathers in that field. either invented ideas, invented items, and so on. And so we can call Sigmund Freud the father of psychoanalysis. We can call Albert Einstein father of modern physics, because they invented something, or they created some body of information. And we have James Naismith, called the father of basketball. Then in scripture, in the Bible, we also read of Jubal, who is described as the father of all those who play flute and music. In other words, he's the father of all instrumentalists. He's called Jubal. And if you're an instrumentalist, you should know that your father is Jubal. But you see, he's called a father because he's recognized as producing something. Then a father is also a title of responsibility. Responsibility. You don't need to be a biological father of somebody, or you don't need to be the person who gave birth to somebody, but as long as the person supports you, takes care, provides an alternative care and affection, that person is a father. And like I said, it does not require biological identification. All the person needs is to show responsibility. And there are people who have supported children, and that is a father. For many people have grown up looking up to certain male figures as fathers, learning from them, receiving from them, being supported by them, and so they qualify to be called fathers. So father is also a title of responsibility. Now, when we come into the church, we realize that the term father is also a title of reverence. A title of reverence. So the father is a title of respect. It is a title of recognition. It is a title of responsibility, and a title of reverence. If you belong to the Catholic fraternity, obviously you call your priest father. Why do you call him father? Because he's a revered man of God in your life. In church, many people call their pastors father, and just because they are revered, it's a title of reverence. But let's again look at who we can describe as a father, or what kinds of fathers do we have, or how does one become a father? How does one earn the title father? A man can become a father in several ways, and like I said, fatherhood is not only biological, it is also relational, emotional, moral, legal, and spiritual. And that's what we want to discover now. Number one, we have biological fatherhood. Biological fatherhood. Now, a man obviously becomes a biological father through the birth of a child he has helped conceive. So I don't need to go into details because this is obvious, and that is the commonest way or the easiest way to understand the term father. It's the most natural way. However, biology alone does not automatically make some a father. or someone a responsible father. And that's why I said fatherhood is intentional. And so producing a child and raising a child are not always the same thing. And it's Pope John the 23rd who said, it is easier for a father to have children than for children to have a real father. It is easier for a father to have children than for children to have a real father. Because no, the biological connection alone does not make one a father. But hey, we can't also run away from that. I know a situation where, somebody was going to get married, and the biological father, who never took care of her, came around. And she got so angry that when the man came around, the man wanted to hold her hand to the altar. And so it turned into a family, dispute right there during the wedding. And so we came in and, for some of us, we had to come in and plead that, listen, he has not been around, but at least he has realized that he fathered you, and he's here. I mean, they knew each other, obviously, and he wants to make amends. And so what do we do? So we had to appeal to the family, appeal to the bride, to allow the father to walk her down the aisle. And guess what? During the exchange of vows, who gives this woman in marriage? And this man came up. I got him. You can trust that. I got him. I said, you take the hand of your daughter, place it in the hand of this gentleman, and pray for her. Pray for them. Pour something out of your heart. The reason, whatever reason brought you here, we want you to convert that into prayer. And believe me, the man burst into tears, and it became an emotional situation. Because biological connection is not enough, and we should go beyond that. I remember one elderly lawyer who was even a lawyer during the time of Kwame Nkrumah, and I think was part of a legal team or something for Nkrumah. His father denied him. When he grew up, I mean, he was just a chip of the old block. The resemblance was so serious that they didn't even need any DNA. And yet the man did not. One day, the man looked for this son, went to him and said, I want to apologize to you. You are my son. This big lawyer said, yes, that is the fact. But the truth is that you are not. And so I won't mind you. Some way, somehow, as a very young pastor, walked into the incident, and I said, forgive him. Forgive him. Oh, Papa, they will call me Papa. And this is an old man calling me Papa. I mean, if it had not been you, okay. So, he joked and said, well, if you want me to accept you as my father, then go look for my mom, come and perform the naming ceremony. I mean, his mom had obviously passed on, and this old man could not perform any, so we just brushed it aside, and we made the old man pray for the son he did not take care of, who was also now elderly. And 2 days after that, that old man passed on. And so it was his spirit was disturbing him until he made peace. And so now this old lawyer was happy that at least that man made peace with himself, made peace with the family, made peace with God before passing on. And obviously, that was not to say that the man had to be responsible for the burial and so on. Yes, he participated, but so biological connection is not enough. But yet we have biological fatherhood. That is basic. We also have legal fatherhood. Legal fatherhood, and which suggests that a man may become a father legally through adoption, through guardianship, through foster parenting, and also through marrying a woman with children. Now let's explain. Now, if you adopt a child legally, you go through all the process. That child may not be will definitely not be your biological child, but legally that child is yours. The child ends your responsibility. You may even decide to put your name on that child because legally that child has become yours. The state and the structures there be have made you the father of that child, and so it becomes. Now, in terms of guardianship, it may not be permanent, but in our society, some people pass away, and then they commit their children to some relative, probably a well-to-do relative, and this relative becomes the guardian of that child. And but at a point, because this guardianship, has received the blessing of the family and so on, you could even decide to put your name on the child. And I've known people who have done that and successfully raised the children and have loved the children as their own. When it comes to foster parenting, yes, foster parenting may require a little bit of a force. The biological parent may be alive, but because of certain irresponsibilities, the state can even take the child from the biological father and give that child to a foster father, and that foster father becomes the legal father of the child. At no point can you raise any objection once it has been taken, or the decision has been taken by the state to put that child in a foster home, or give the child foster father. And then, of course, if you marry a woman with children, the children become your legal children. Once you are legally married to the mother, the children become your legal children, your legal responsibility. We don't see much of that in our system because sometimes people divorce, they go into marriage with their children, and then the divorced spouse also interferes, and sometimes when you have child support, the dynamics change. But the ideal situation is that when you marry a woman with children, you become the legal father. So, or what we call stepfather. So there are biological fathers, and we also have legal fathers, or the situation of legal fatherhood. Then we also have social fatherhood. But before then, let me open the phone lines. If you are listening to us on radio and you want to phone in, the number to call is it's a landline. The number to call is 030 395 6641. 030 39 56641. How do I call this number in a much better way? Or 0303. Yeah. 0303 956641. I think that's a better way. 0303 956641. You can call and talk to us on this program. Then we also have the WhatsApp line. The WhatsApp line. That one you can't call. You can only send your WhatsApp. You can only send a message on the WhatsApp line 0544 321019. 0544 321019. You can contact us on any of these lines, and we will be happy to get your input. And then, of course, if you are on Facebook, you can also share your comments online. Good. So you are tuned into Z101.9, your lifestyle, leisure, and business platforms. And here we are with Fathers and Family. And my name is Pastor Gatti. Maybe at the close of the program, I will give you a personal number to contact, and that will only be for issues on fatherhood and nothing else. So I will give that number at the close of the session. So we have biological fatherhood, and then we have legal fatherhood. Nothing yet? Okay. Good. Biological fatherhood and legal fatherhood. We also have social fatherhood. And social fatherhood is a situation where a man becomes a father when he consistently plays the role of a father in a child's life. They may not be biologically connected, they may not be legally connected, but some way, somehow, this man supports the child, providing support, being there for that child emotionally, mentoring that child, protecting that child, guiding that child. There are people who do that. They may not want to adopt officially, but the fact that child may even have a mother or a father somewhere, but this man takes interest and tries to help. Even in the family, our uncles have done that. Uncles have taken care of some of their nieces and their nephews. You know, these are social fathers. A grandfather may do that. Teachers out of sympathy have also accepted to take care of certain children. I know even football coaches who have literally taken care of some children. They saw the children, they saw the talent in them, but then they saw them as neglected children. And with the eye of a coach, some have adopted the children or taken over and taken care of the children and use them to rise in life. So these are social fathers. They become father figures, and the children depend on them. So that is social fatherhood. We also have spiritual fatherhood. Spiritual fatherhood. Now, this is such a a broad and also a dicey situation that I will take time for us to really dissect this spiritual fatherhood. Somehow we are getting it wrong, and we may have to revisit or visit this issue. You know, Elijah had no relations with Elisha. Biologically, they were not related in any way. It just happened that God said, asked him to go and anoint Elisha to be prophet in his stead. Of course, when Elijah became depressed and wanted to die because Jezebel was threatening and so on and so forth. So Elijah then went to meet Elisha, threw his mantle on him as a sign, and then Elisha followed. He bade farewell to his own family, he bade farewell to his career, and became a full-time servant to Elijah. Now, Elijah had this school of prophets, which was started way back by Samuel. And that's the school of prophets continued. And so during Elijah's time, he had school of prophets in Bethel, some in Jordan, and in some other places. All these schools had sons of the prophets in it. They were like Bible students. And Elisha joined them, but while he was in this school, was also following Elijah personally. The Bible describes him as pouring water on Elijah's hands. And so Elijah, as far as Elisha was concerned, was not just a teacher, but was a father. Why? Because Elijah made time for him. He invested in him. He impacted into his life. He instructed him. He inspired him, and all that. We will look at that. So when it was time for Elijah to be taken away, Elijah said, look, if you see me going, then you would have what you have asked for, which is the double portion of the Spirit on him. So just as when he was going, the other sons of the prophet were like, hey, do you know your master will be taken away from you today? Elisha was like, hey, don't worry. I know. And they, as far as they were concerned, Elijah was a master. They called him master. Do you know your master? Do you know your master? Do you know your master? But when the time came for Elijah to be taken away, while he was going, Elisha screamed, my father, my father. That was deep. He didn't say my master, my master. He said my father, my father. So when we pick up this full topic of spiritual fatherhood, we will investigate what changed. What made him change from seeing Elijah as a master into seeing Elijah as a father. That is the typical example of spiritual fatherhood. It is a religious, mentoring thing. When it's not easy to call somebody a spiritual father like we do. We just do it so leisurely. I remember one young pastor, I think I had taught him in school, in one of the universities. He was my student. Later came in and said, "Sir, I want you to be my spiritual father." I said, "Wow, you know what you are asking for? I'm not interested in the tithe you would bring to me, like the status quo. Are you ready to have me rebuke you, to instruct you, to teach you, to mold you in the way you should go? Because that is what you are asking for." Today we have this. We look at other senior pastors or ministers who are successful, who have their big ministries, and then we look for some money. We call it seed. We look for some seed. We go and sow it to them, and then the next time we are like, "Oh, that's my spiritual father." He's your spiritual father because you sent him a seed? God forgive us. And will also allow yourself to be called a spiritual father just because he brought you money? Look, we have had some very funny situations in this country where a pastor gets into trouble, especially with the media, and a senior minister comes in and lambasts that younger minister, and then the younger minister turns out and says, "But it was you who ordained me." And the senior pastor didn't even know that he ordained that younger minister who was in trouble. And the insults started from there. You cannot ordain a person into ministry and remain disconnected from that person. The moment you ordain somebody into ministry, you become responsible for that person's behavior, for that person's success, for that person's nurturing. Because you see, then I have a lot to say about spiritual fatherhood. Because we are missing it all in our time. How can you call somebody your spiritual son or your spiritual daughter when you don't even spend time with him? When you cannot sit him down once in a while, invite him to your office, assess his ministry, advise him. Where he needs to be commended, you commend him. Where he needs to be rebuked, you rebuke him. Look, as a spiritual father, you are responsible just as a physical, biological father would be to his biological son. And even if his ministry is not doing well and so has some financial challenges, it is your responsibility as the spiritual father to sort him out and make sure that this man does not leave the ministry or lose faith because of the challenges he's going through. Let your relationship come from your heart. That is my spiritual son. I pray for him every day. I pray for him. I counsel him. I make sure he succeeds. That is the work of a spiritual father. Father and son. Well, Elisha succeeded as a spiritual son to a spiritual father who is Elijah. But you see, when Elisha himself picked up a son and wanted to nurture him and make him his successor, that son became incorrigible. Elisha did everything for Gehazi. Went with him. There were times he would even give him his rod. Go and lay it on a dying or a dead son. He would send, go and ask this one, what is her problem? And so on. I mean, Elisha tried his best. But this Gehazi was incorrigible. Naaman came, and when Naaman was leaving, he didn't, he wanted to leave some gifts. Gehazi watched Elisha refuse the gift from Naaman. And it was deliberate. It was not because Elisha didn't have a need. That was in chapter 5. But when you move to chapter, that second King, you move to chapter 6, you realize that Elisha, who had at that time become the head of the school of prophets, had needs. Their old structures were small. They needed to pull down and bigger structures. So even when they were going to cut wood, the axe they used was a borrowed axe. And yet, in the midst of that situation, Elisha refused the money and the gift from Naaman. Gehazi was there. He saw it. Instead of learning from it, that the minute you don't commercialize the gift of God, Gehazi said, no way. As for my boss, he doesn't know how to chop money. So when Naaman went, he secretly went behind him, behind his master, and collected some items. Naaman was so excited. Gehazi was like, oh, just give me this and, oh, Naaman doubled it for him because he said that his master had received guests. Elisha said something. He said, was not my heart with you when you met Naaman and collected those things? Then he asked him a question. Is it time for you to receive? Is it time? You see, this is a spiritual father who would rebuke, correct, and straighten a spiritual son. But then, of course, the spiritual father may do his part, but the spiritual son may also prove to be worthy, and it should work both ways. So, yes, as a spiritual father, you need to inspire, you need to instruct, you need to inform, you need to, provide counsel, you need to guide the younger one, you need to teach him wisdom. Don't let him just look at your success. Let him also understand what you have been through, so that they wouldn't call you their spiritual father because they want you to lay your hands on them so that overnight they also become successful in ministry like you have. Teach them. Let them know what you have been through. Am I already teaching on spiritual fatherhood? Let me reserve it for the future. We will definitely get there. But you see, spiritual fatherhood includes pastors, mentors, teachers, disciples, and so on. And please stop using that term if you are not ready to be a spiritual father. And stop calling yourself a spiritual son to somebody if all you do is to visit that person at the end of the year with money and gifts. If I cannot influence you, if I cannot pray for you, if I cannot teach you, if I cannot correct you, if I cannot rebuke you, then you are not my spiritual son. Well, the good news is I have a few spiritual sons as well. So we have biological fatherhood, we have legal fatherhood, we have social fatherhood, and we have spiritual fatherhood. Finally, we have moral and responsible fatherhood. And this is the highest level of fatherhood. And this is what we are going to investigate in the weeks ahead of us. Moral and responsible fatherhood. And we will get to know that a responsible father is one who accepts accountability. Accountability for a child's behavior. A responsible father is the one who lives as an example. So the next time you sit in your car with your children and a taxi driver crosses you, watch what you say. Oh yeah, the children will surely learn. And the next time you are not around, they will say that to their friends. Oh, somebody is coming to see you. You really don't want to meet that person. And so you tell the child, tell him I'm not there. And the child, who at that time must have learned the tricks very well, will not just say the father is not there. He will add, oh, this morning he had to go somewhere. He will add to what you said. And then you think, oh, yeah, that's a good boy. Oh, yeah, he's learning your lies. And don't be surprised if he becomes a leader in future and all he does is to lie to people because he cannot face responsibility. A father, a responsible father, protects the family. In fact, that is the direction we are going. And that is when we will know that as a responsible father plans for the family. Even before the children come, he's planning. And you plan by getting married. You don't just start living with somebody and then when the children come or when you say, oh no, no. You plan. You are present for the children. You provide for the children. You protect the children. You pray for the children. You play with the children. You project the children. You punish the children. And look, that is a responsible. We will follow this as a sequence and look at all that in this Fathers and Family series. A father is not merely an event. A father is not an occurrence. It is a lifelong calling. You don't become a father because of a one act or a single act. You are a father because it is a calling. And God will hold you accountable. What have we said today, talking about who a father is? A male becomes a biological father in a moment. And that moment could be out of pleasure, out of pain, out of wickedness, and what have you. Can become a father. But the true father is formed over time. It is easier for a father to have children than for children to have real fathers. A true father is formed over time through responsibility, through character. Can your children look at you and model you? Can your daughter look at you and say, I want to marry a man who behaves just like my dad? Character. Then there is sacrifice, there is love, there is consistency. And beloved, any man can help bring a child into this world, but it takes commitment, character, compassion to be a true father. My name is Pastor Gate, and this is where I draw the curtain on fathers and family for today. If you want to get in touch with me personally, I'm giving you a line. It is 0553 743 753. 0553 743 753. You can call me off air and we can have a chat. You can also visit my Facebook, John Gate, and you can listen to this program again. You can also visit the Facebook of this station, or the YouTube. The Facebook is ZFMGH. ZFMGH. So the X, the Facebook, the Instagram is ZFMGH. And then for YouTube and TikTok, you can do Z Multimedia. Until I come your way with another insightful discussion on fatherhood, I pray that the good Lord will bless and keep you. In Swahili, we'll say, Barikiwe. Be blessed.